Hey, how's it going, guys? This is your boy Hazzed, and in today's video we're going to be talking about FrostDK PvP, as a lot of the community seems to have this idea that FrostDK is extremely weak. So in this video we're going to deep dive into exactly where we're strong, where we're weak, the good and the bad, and discuss where we actually are, because I feel like a lot of the time we're getting a lot of slack that isn't necessarily true, because there's a lot of opinions of people who haven't really deep dived into the spec, haven't really dueled, haven't really felt out their class, and haven't really practiced some of the new abilities like they should have overall to really compete with a lot of these other classes. Because I do have to admit, it is a bit harder than it was in the previous expansion, and even myself, when I was doing all the dueling on the pre-patch, it took me weeks to actually get good at fighting other classes on a FrostDK. To get anywhere close to where I am currently. So let's go ahead in this video talk about this stuff, and I actually have some dueling footage that I went out and had some fun dueling some people out in the duel pits. Had a really good time, met some awesome people. So let's go ahead and jump into this and do this. So starting out, we're going to talk about the absolute biggest stick in the room, the thing that every Death Knight currently fears and believes is absolutely unbeatable. We're going to talk about Frost Death Knight versus Ret. Now, the first thing you need to understand before walking into that room altogether, because if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to pop defensives, it is going to end very poorly for you as a FrostDK, and there's a reason for that. As a FrostDK, we are ranged caster counters. All of our damage mitigation applies to magical abilities. Therefore, things that we are going to be weak against is a melee that's up in your face. Absolutely crazy. And obviously, if you're Necrolord, you even dive deeper into that anti-caster, anti-range stability, because you're constantly pulling in targets during your cooldowns, allowing you to actually grant yourself a very strong burst. Now, when it comes to Paladins, their current meta is they are absolutely melee counter class. So anything that's a warrior, a death knight, even some of the overpowered feral healing is still no match to stand toe-to-toe with a retribution paladin, because of their just over-strengthening wogs. They get a nice big wog crit, out of that. Even when they have cooldowns up, we're talking, the 8Ks normally, and then like the 18Ks when they've got full cooldowns rolling. Just absolutely massive counterable healing pressure. But even though they're that strong, guys, us as FrostDKs do actually have some avenues to actually do quite a bit of damage. And what I was trying to explain kind of in the opener there is FrostDKs are like the anti-caster. Rets are the anti-melee. They're yin and yang. Problem is, when you put those two together and you fight them, Ret actually has a better foothold currently than we do, but it's not nearly as big as the majority of people think. So let's go ahead and put up this video on the screen. One more thing I'd like to say before we look at this is, surprisingly, FrostDKs can actually counter, like I was just talking about before, casters that Rets can't beat, like such as Shadow Priests and things like that are really strong to the majority of classes. But to FrostDKs, with the amount of counter ability we have towards casters, actually fares better versus them than Ret Paladins do, even with their healing. I mean, obviously, because Shadow Priest also has dispels, but let's go ahead and jump into this video and talk about this. Alright, bringing that up. Alright, so you can see here, we got a Ret Paladin. We're flesh crafting up. That's going to absorb some of the pressure and allow us to go quite a bit more offensive off the opener. Now, my goal here is to hit him with the Remorseless Winter Stun and cause him to play completely defensive using his damage on healing. Now, what I'm trying to do here is force bubble as fast as I could. A big mistake I made there is I got hit by a shell without throwing up some kind of invulnerability or damage reduction when it exploded. Now, I got bubble here, so I'm throwing down AMZ to mitigate damage, causing him not to be able to go defensive. I did miss a kick here. That was a good fake cast on Push's part, and I come in aggressively on him. Like, at this point, I've used my cooldowns, and right now I'm weaving death strikes in and out so I can heal myself up, but I'm also applying constant pressure. If you don't apply that constant pressure, they're obviously going to heal themselves to full over and over again. As you can see, we're almost sitting neck and neck right now outside of burst. He's definitely getting the upper hand of it, because his healing is actually stronger than our Death Strike healing is. So he is going to get some massive wogs and basically heal back to full while I'm sitting at 54% health. Now, the one thing you noticed about my healing is it's very cooldown based. I used Lichborn first. I used my new Death Pact on the secondary healing to heal up to 100%, and then I come in. I'm really just buying time to get to that secondary burst pressure so I can go ahead and try to push this paladin into the dead zone because we've already gotten bubble. Right now, we're just trying to survive. And you can see I death pacted near the end to heal myself up, which actually caused him to try and play aggressive. Now, what he did there at the end is he hit me with the Hodge. He tried to throw out ashes with his wings, and he tried to kill me within the last 30%. Now, he did say he was trying to withhold wings as long as he could, but I've actually seen that strat, so I mean, it could go either way. I don't really care which, but it is a good fight to show. So that is how the majority of my fights go with Ret Paladins, is I open up extremely hard, I get them to bubble within the first 10 seconds or so, getting their cooldowns, and the hard part is that last stretch, trying to reach that second pillar. That is the hardest part of the fight, is trying to close that gap. And I believe today, since it's reset day, we'll be able to get a legendary that allows us to absorb 160% more magic damage on our anti-magic cell and heal us for the amount that's absorbed. That blows my mind, and I believe when I get that and my extra 10% strength from my abomination limb, I might even be trading wins with the majority of paladins I fight. Now, what did it take for me to, let's say, win this duel? It was like 1 in 6. Like 1 in 6 duels I could actually, get close to victory. The majority of the time I'd cause them to bubble. They'd reach around 30% healing, and then they'd kind of slowly gain on me, and then I'd just kind of puff out at the end, which is, it really is kind of expected with the amount of ret healing he has. So that brings me to the conversation of where our Frosty K's healing is. We definitely, out of the melee classes, have the weakest survivability when it comes to Death Strike healing. The only thing that subjugates this and allows me to be able to fight these classes is maximizing Lichborn, maximizing Sacrificial Pact, and maximizing Death Pact to give me the survivability to last long enough to make it to my secondary cooldowns, which causes me to be able to obviously compete with Ret Paladins. And I feel like that is the biggest thing the majority of people are missing, especially when I look at the forums and they're talking about damage and they're talking about the weak healing and talking about how they can't compete with these classes. You definitely can compete with them if you do it correctly, but it is painful, it hurts, it's hard, you got to do it 100% correct. And realistically, I could see Death Knights getting a Death Strike nerf in the near future, because that's the ugly. The good is our consistent pressure. Like, any Ret Paladins I have dueled have looked at me afterwards and said, bro, those constant obliterates you're dropping are actually nutty. The amount of consistent burst pressure you're dealing on a Frosty K blows my mind. Because normally when they duel Frosty Ks, it's an easy win. The majority of Rets I duel look at me afterwards and they're like, bro, what did you just do and how did you do it? Because if they don't expect that, the majority of Rets, like random Rets, I'll beat. But if they're like Glads and they're experienced, this is the kind of fight I'm going to have with them. It's going to be more than a minute. It's going to strain out. I'm going to force that cooldown. And then I'm going to heal up to full, after you just saw it. And then I'm going to try and burst them down at the end. And that's one of the things I feel like a lot of people are missing today, is that extra burst action. Now, I do have Chill Streak at the moment, but what I was using in this duel was actually Dead of Winter. Now, the reason I was using Dead of Winter is it's an extra stun you can do, and you can chain CC that with Asphyxiate and get off a longer burst, and that's realistically what I'm using to force bubble. Now, the nice thing about Dead of Winter is they did actually buff this a little bit. It used to be they could throw Freedom on themselves, dispel the stacks, and they would just run free, but they can't do that now because the stack is not slowing. So the stacks stack up as a red debuff, undispellable, and then it stuns them. Actually love that they changed the PvP talent to do that, because that right there helped me a lot when it came to like trying to force a ret bubble, which was really cool. And yeah, I feel like we've talked about Reds enough at this point. Let's go ahead and start talking about some other classes. Next up on the list, we'll be dueling a Fire Mage, which fairly good duels here versus a Fire Mage. Mages are I'd say, a fairly challenging duel to DKs. You definitely have to play smart. You definitely have to use your damage reduction, because you will get eaten if you don't. The damage from Fire Mages is actually pretty crazy. And it really follows the same rule. You really do have to use like your full Lichborn heals, your Sacrificial Pact, and realistically, if you're dueling people and you aren't going through the motion of cooldowns like this self-survivable healing that you should be doing, you definitely aren't playing your class correctly in that duel. Like, that is the fact. If you aren't using those, you aren't playing your DK correctly. So let's go ahead and pop up this duel, and we'll start out talking about it. Now, first up, alright. So this Fire Mage, he comes in on me. I'm staying at least 10 yards away from him. I close the gap on him. I hit him with chains. I open up on him. He hits me with Disorientate. I am rooted in this, so I take quite a bit of damage. Now the thing I do, that's his first like cooldowns. I AMS that. I caught I think the back end of that pyroblast with AMS. It looks like it actually broke it, so I took a bit of damage. But I am bursting on him up front. As you can see, I've got A-bomb limb running, which actually makes it so he can't get away from me. He waited to use his port until after A-bomb limb. That is very important because I forced his defensive cooldowns in that A-bomb limb because he couldn't get away. That is absolutely amazing. The guys that I didn't pick A-bomb limb right now are like, man, I should have picked A-bomb limb for that, that caster countering, because it is actually, I highly underestimated the strength of that thing when it came to dueling and of course battlegrounds, since the majority of the time I was just focusing on arena. Now right now I'm just trying to focus kicks, trying to mitigate as much as I can, and now obviously I'm weaving in death strikes. Now here I use fleshcraft during his ice block. I didn't use it up front, which actually gave me a nice extra bit of health to deal damage on the fire mage as he's going to kite me out here and try to run the best he can. Now I stood in that obviously because it was going to go into my flesh and I really wasn't going to take that much damage. Now I'm just kind of gripping it back, trying to keep him in, keeping the interrupts on, and weaving death strikes. Now you can see we take a victory. Now there are a couple more fire duels we could cover here. I dueled him I think one more time. Let me go ahead and try and get that open on my screen over here, and we can go ahead and talk about that in one go. So the secondary fight, I throw fleshcraft up for because obviously I remember. And I've got my little ghoul coming in behind me for extra damage pressure until I want to sacrifice him. Never use your ghoul up front against Ret Paladin, by the way, because they will deal extra damage to you if you have that ghoul up trying to hit him. Plus, it'll most likely DR your stuns. That is probably the worst thing this guy could ever duel. But as you can see, I'm following kind of the same motion. The first duel he hits me with, the first burst he hits me with, I anti-magic shell that. I close the distance on him, I full burst. Now, I'm just beating on him at this point. He did get a little bit of extra survivability on me here than he did last time. Got a little bit of extra time on that cauterize, which caused the fight to elongate out a little bit longer, but he got some distance on me. He's actually outside my dead range where I couldn't grip him there while he's hitting me with those blasts. That was actually like next level IQ move right there. Very strong to do if you can get outside of people's dead zones. And we're just sitting in CC. As you can see, we're following the same thing. We've used Lichborn to heal. We've used our Sacrificial Ghoul Pact, and we used our Death Pact there at the end to heal back to full. In case we needed to actually elongate that fight out further and go for the long range instead of the short. Now even against this fire mage, I'm pushing 1 minute plus duels, like just as long as I'm dueling a Ret Paladin, I'm dueling a fire mage in a duel. Absolutely insane the amount of time. You need to get really good at using these off healings if you want to compete if you want against the majority of these classes. Now remember what we've said recently about those Ret Paladins. They've even told us that our damage is scary, but our weakness obviously comes when it comes to the Death Strike off healing. If the only thing you're relying on is your Death Strike off heals, you are definitely going to lose to the majority of classes in the game currently. Next on the list, we've got Arms Warrior. Now, Arms Warriors are fairly scary, right? They pop off with that charge. They come in hard. I couldn't stun him because he threw a Blade Storm off the opener. Great move to do, especially if I'm running Remorseless Winter, so don't run that against Warriors. Now, next up, we're getting disarmed here, so we have to actually kite him out. You can see I'm using Lichborn and healing as I'm kiting him out. Now you need to make sure you keep spamming chains to generate runic power on him so you can get off more Lichborns. As I come back in, I Sacrificial Pact my pet to hit back to 100%. As you can see, we're getting another defensive out of him. Die by sword as we're kiting him out. But as you can see, I'm actually doing quite a bit of kiting against an Armed Warrior to either kite out his defensives or not allow him to get up pressure during the duel to actually, make me take more damage. Now, I can't get out of that fear, obviously, because I used Lichborn to heal earlier, but I do still have Death Pact. Now, I'm at 36% health, and you're probably wondering, why did I use my Death Pact so early in comparison to, let's say, how I normally use it? And the reason being is, Warriors have Execute. You do not want to hit that execute range, and if you do, that Warrior's going to make you pay for it. Now, as you can see at the end there, Remorseless Winter Stun came out, Pillar was just coming back up, and I was just about to lay into that secondary burst as he went down. Ignore Pain's really strong. Arms Warriors are pretty beefy. I dueled a lot of them, obviously, on the pre-patch out there that were fairly strong. He actually did really well against me, popping defensives well. He avoided the first stun, and we came out fighting good, and he was even like, dang, good duel. See, you see how surprised people are when they're dueling me on a Frosty K? They're like, I read everywhere that they absolutely sucked. Why am I losing? They're really surprised about it. Another cool person we met out there, Reese is out there slamming some stuff down, holding it down for his Arms Warriors. I see you guys. The real OGs are the ones in the duel pits trying stuff out. I'm watching you guys. I'm keeping my eye out. But next up, we've got the bane of the majority of Frosty K's existence. Obviously, one of the scariest classes in the game currently. We're going to be talking about some sub-rogues. Now, when dueling a sub rogue, I'm going to go ahead and pull open this video so I can watch it and talk about it with you guys here. Now, sub rogues are kind of interesting. The way they are right now, they're extremely bursty off the opener. So obviously, I'm Necrolord. I've got Fleshcraft. That's going to bring me to a bit higher health pool than the majority of DKs you see dueling out there. Because if you went Kyrian, you probably absolutely hate rogues with a burning passion, considering they probably mitigate that extra burst you have. And the only thing you have extra is the file, which actually the file is pretty good. It'll actually mitigate a lot of damage. What is it, like 55% healing if you're spec'd into it, like 20-25% outside of it. But anyway, so I throw up Fleshcraft. If you got the vial with Kyrian, you probably want to use that fairly soon, otherwise it's going to really hurt. So even with Fleshcraft up, I can still take 50% of my damage off the opener against a good rogue. It's absolutely insane. But what you do as a DK is you counter burst it. You burst on them as hard as you can. You try to get them to vanish and get away from you. That's the first thing you want to do. And during that vanish, you're going to heal up. So let's go ahead and put this video up. Alright, so rogue opens up on me. You do not want to sit the opener stun. If you do, you're dead, man. You are absolutely dead as a Frost DK. Now, I obviously get out of that stun real quick. And what I do is I full counter burst on this guy and go ham. Now, there's two ways this can go. They can dodge my obliterates, which really outlast the duel, or they can get absolutely whopped by a couple of massive obliterates and the duel can end fast. Next up, we'll put up a video where it actually goes quite a bit long. Alright, so this rogue's going to come out on me. This one's going to last quite a bit longer. I throw out my ghoul first so I can apply a little bit extra damage and hope maybe the ghoul keeps him in combat as he tries to re-invis, because if he does that, it's really going to put the ball in my court overall when it comes to getting hit. So he's going to open up on me. He's stacking up Dagger in the Dark, waiting for it. I trinket that. I kite it out a little bit. I'm throwing up my big burst on there, and I start trying to lay in damage. Now, this is where dueling a good rogue versus a not so good rogue comes into play, is he is going to absolutely try to avoid my burst, but he's also doing exactly what I want him to do at the same time. Now, I missed my D&D probably by a couple yards there. We almost had him, but we're going to come out again. Now, he's not expecting is the Remorseless Winter stun after the initial burst, and that's really what's going to cost him this duel here, is the fact that he got stunned twice. That is something he wasn't expecting, and he go ahead and throws up his cloak here. He's really trying to survive, but it go ahead and it ends pretty badly there. Now, obviously, we've pulled out a couple wins here. We've had fairly good luck, but duels can also go bad versus a rogue. And you're probably wondering exactly what I mean. The worst possible case scenario that can happen is those obliterates that you're throwing gets dodged. So in other words, like your stun misses, your stun doesn't hit, they cloak your Remorseless Winter stun. Something along those lines is where things start going bad for us as Frost DKs, because rogues open up on us, they'll hit us with some damage, and then they'll dip out. You've wasted your burst at that point, obviously, but we got the vanish out. That's what we were looking for. We were looking for them defensive cooldowns, kind of like, you know, when we're dueling a paladin. Now, the rogue's going to sit and viz for a bit, might even full heal if he got hit by one or two of the obliterates, and then he's going to open up back on you. The worst possible scenario is your obliterates miss, so you get no runic power. Without runic power, you're not going to be able to Lichborn, you're not going to be able to Sacrificial Pact, and the only thing you're really left with at that point is Death Pact. And Death Pact is probably the worst case scenario if that is your only healing option, because obviously you can't even Death Strike without having some runic power. So worst case scenario, your obliterates get dodged, and that's why obviously using the stuns is very important, because as long as that rogue's stunned, you're going to be able to hit him. Most likely they're going to trinket the first stun you put him in, which is either the Asphyxiate or the Remorseless Winter off the opener. I think the Asphyxiate will most likely be better during the opener stun, because a lot of rogues I've noticed like to use cloak during the opener, and you can't actually cloak Asphyxiate. Now, if a rogue is cloaked and you got him stunned, how do you generate runic power without obviously missing? Now, the one thing you don't want to do is obliteration. Don't use your obliteration if the rogue is cloaked, because that's frost damage and they're not going to take any extra damage from that. So what do? You just lay in some normal obliterates to them, generate some runic power for them when they reopen, and hopefully you can push yourself back to full health is really what you're aiming for on a Frost DK, and then you kind of finish up the fight after that. And last up, I just want to kind of touch on this Demon Hunter one. As we all know, Demon Hunters got quite a bit nerfed, and they tend to die pretty easily in comparison to what they were in Battle for Azeroth. But there is something I'd like to show you guys and take note here. Was watch what Abomination does during this duel. Alright, so we start off on this Demon Hunter. He jumps on my head like, you know, every Demon Hunter always does in the beginning of a duel, because that's what Demon Hunters do. They jump on my head. So there he goes, jumps on my head. And we're just going to kind of kite him out. We're dealing a little bit of pressure here. We're going to go ahead and full burst on this guy. He's going to take a lot of damage. And the first thing he's going to do is jump into the air. Watch him jump. Here it comes. Boom! Instantly, the grip pulls him back in. Halfway through his jump, the A-bomb limb pulled him back in. That is amazing. I just mitigated probably like 80% of my health pool being damaged by him shooting down Chaos little chaos bolts into my head, and it actually hurts really bad. So what we have to do if he actually gets that off, I would have had to zone. I would have had to probably self-heal after the zone with pooled runic power from like spamming either Helling Blast or Chains on him in the sky to heal back to full, and then we would finish our fight that way. But being that my Abomination Limb pulled back in the Demon Hunter, we didn't have to do that. We actually saved quite a bit of defensive cooldowns, pulling him back down out of the sky instead of allowing him to fully use that ability to actually shoot into our heads. So that's kind of interesting, something that Necrolords get over Demon Hunters that some of the other things wouldn't get. So let's go ahead and sum up this video after discussing these and showing you guys some of these duels that we were doing yesterday. So let's sum up this video. At the end of the day, how do I feel about Frost DK PvP? Now here's the thing, guys. Now obviously the first thing people are going to say is, it's not a 10k aim shot, it's not a 15k Templar's verdict. You guys got to understand something. Our strength doesn't come from one massive hit. One mitigatable, one massive hit. Our damage comes from an overall obliteration burst. We're talking 6 massive 5 to 6k obliterations on a target, which really caused them to play defensively throughout the fight. I do enjoy this. We do actually have a lot more burst pressure than we previously did in Battle for Azeroth, which allows me to do the things that I'm currently doing, which obviously I wouldn't have been able to do previously because I couldn't even force Bubble out of my arena partner in BFA. It was actually that bad. With Frost DK single target burst, but now obviously I can. I force Bubble, I go out, I brawl, I have a blast, and realistically it doesn't matter if I can beat every single class out of the duel pits. What really matters is that I'm enjoying my time doing it. I'm having fun dueling. I feel competitive when I'm doing these classes, and I don't need to be standing there with 100% over them, just destroying these other classes, because realistically, and from my point of view, that wouldn't be fun for me either if it was that easy. I actually love the challenge. I love putting in the little puzzle pieces, trying to get a little farther against this class, a little further against that class, and I'm having a lot of fun doing that here in Shadowlands, even though I know we have a heck of a lot weaker healing than these other classes. Now you're probably thinking, what other classes specifically? Ret Paladins have a massive healing buff over us. Enhancement Shamans heal so much harder than we do. Feral Druids, insane amount of burst pressure with their healing. Like, there are a lot of classes out there that just seem insane while we're fighting them and almost impossible to beat. But you definitely can compete with them, but it is obviously, it's not easy, guys. It's really not easy. But the one thing we do have, and I can say with 100% for sure, is we do have fairly good consistent burst pressure, and that's what makes us terrifying. Those constant 6k crits coming out, those are going to be constant openers for killing a target in arena, not just one massive hit that can be avoided. It's going to be constant. We're just going to smash on the targets over and over again. And you're most likely wondering why the majority of high rated arena players say Frost DK is even better than Unholy, and the reason being is, can you imagine laying out those 6k obliterates, mass gripping a target in, and applying a chill streak that's also hitting for 6k? At this point, you are going to be laying out 12k constant hits on a single target over and over and over again for literally 12 seconds. Like, that is a massive amount of burst pressure. That is what people are absolutely terrified of. And in these duels, as you can see, I can't use chill streak. I am not using the strongest version of DK in these duels at all. But we're still competitive. Can you imagine when I get 10% extra strength from A-Bomb Limb? When I get 160% more healing from a legendary? Guys, I'm gonna be like toe-to-toe with these hard classes out here. It is gonna be actually enjoyable. And most likely I'll be trading wins with the majority of them. And I'm really excited to see where that goes from here. But anyways, guys, at this point, if you didn't go Necro Lord, I'm sorry, guys. That's really cutting down on your survivability when it comes to like battlegrounds and stuff like that. Because realistically, one of the biggest tricks and one of the biggest survival moves for me as a Frost DK, so I don't get absolutely destroyed off the opener in a battleground, is throwing up A-Bomb Limbs so I could hit targets, lay in a chill streak, force them to fight inside my anti-magic zone. This right here, I ain't dying to casters. It ain't gonna happen, guys. I ain't gonna die to casters inside of this. And I ain't gonna leave this thing while I've got slappy hands up, because they have to fight me in this circle while I have that up. And that is something that's actually cool. I really do enjoy that that part of it. I really feel like other classes, like if you're playing Kyrian, you're going to get a little bit of extra frost damage, but overall I feel like you're going to get focused really hard, or you're going to have to play very defensive, and you're going to have to grip people into the group to actually fight them, because you don't have that kind of centered damage reduction that Abomination Limb is going to give you in the long run, because Abomination Limb is actually extremely powerful for mechanical survivability, because if those ranged classes are getting gripped in, they're either A, going to have to walk their way back out to where they were, or B, they're going to have to fight up close. We want them to fight up close because we do massive cleave damage. We have CC. Now, obviously, if I'm using that stun and they're fighting in close, that's going to CC them out. These are all classes that aren't dealing damage to me. They are being mechanically stopped because of one little DK standing in the front, mass gripping people in. And a lot of people aren't seeing the overall strength of this, but you definitely will, especially when we get that legendary where we can throw out our dragon and stun everybody in a straight line. You mass grip people in and stun 10 people, you've basically just won the battleground fight. That will literally win the fight. People will die in that small amount of CD, that small amount of stun. Anyways, guys, I wanted to make this video and update it for you because there's really just a lot of negativity I'm reading, just a lot of just overall people being like, I go out there and I lose duels in 5 seconds. Well, I've got news for you guys. If you're losing duels in 5 seconds, you aren't playing your class correctly. And realistically, I don't even know if you're playing your class at all if you're losing that fast. Like, what is happening with you guys? What is going on? But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I wanted to make this update and just kind of let you guys know exactly what's going on, so you can just not listen to this weird nonsense of people who haven't actually practiced and tried to play their Frost DK and tried to work out how to win. They just got mad at it within the first week without picking up their legendaries, without having their full soul binds, without having their full conduit abilities, and they're just like, no, this is not good. This is not good. No, the healing's not good. But everything else seems to be doing fairly okay. But anyways, guys, again, hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did. And of course, until next time, this was your boy Hazzed.